8.25.
5. This is the file that you will okay, and then if you have the file,
Because I received today email from Lauren. Saying that everything is okay, but the files are still valid.
If you have
I do have the files. I have yes,
okay, but it's still fine. I will copy them to the desktop.
Yeah, this is first.
Okay, I think we can directly go to the key. I think we need to do it one by one. So which is coming first? Yeah, okay, I will change name of this folder.
No, the problem is not the folder, because you didn't copy the folder. It's just this file that I just
Yeah, okay.
just copy. Okay.
Okay, so let me Can you hear us, guys? Unfortunately, you couldn't use this one and
It's okay. I cannot use it.
until now, yeah, just until we finish uploading the demo. Just to
And the micro is on?
yes, now.
Yeah, but
the chat is the chat still.
okay, let's start if you are hearing as well. Hello, everybody. So you can hear me online? Ah, great. Okay. Still a problem with the size of yeah, I don't have the full slide. Maybe I need to do it this way because I don't have the full. I see it's not complete.
Maybe you can open this one. Also stuck on 90. Maybe you can try to open it with another reader, hopefully to open the reader.
Yeah, I think it's better this one. Yeah.
If you want if you need to date by date, or you need slide by slide.
Slide by slide. Yeah.
Slide by slide.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's start. Sorry for this delay. Okay, my name is Mounaim El Yacoubi. I'm from Telecom Sud Paris, and today actually I would, my class is regarding processing of video sequences and especially motion processing. So I will give you a description of the problem of video processing in general, and in the second part actually I will talk more about hidden Markov models. I don't know if you have already studied the technique of hidden Markov models and how to apply it for gesture recognition. And this actually will be important because we have a second class on January, at the end of January 23rd. So this will be a lab session, and it will be regarding action recognition, gesture recognition using hidden Markov models. So both classes are related. Today we'll see more the technical aspect, the theoretical aspects. And in the lab session on the 23rd of January, we will have the lab session. Okay? No, today just the technical part. Okay? So let me start first by giving you, this is the outline of the first part. So I give you an introduction, the main application where we need video processing, video sequence processing, and with some applications. So why we are interested in video processing in general, because you see video today is everywhere. You have a lot, thousands of cameras, video surveillance cameras all over the big cities. See here, I'm giving an example that of the city of London that have over 400,000 cameras just in the city of London. In the internet, of course, you have a lot of video material, whether it's YouTube or other platforms. with some spectacular statistics that you can see here. Just the amount of videos that are uploaded every day. It's actually, you have millions of videos that we have every day. Okay. So why we have this increase of the video content over the cities, over the web, etc. So these are the main reasons. You have we have access to more powerful digital cameras that are more powerful, but at the same time cheap. So people can access the digital cameras, and the same thing applies, etc. So we have powerful cameras, we have powerful computers that can store the video content. So all this is good, but there are some problems, there are limitations. One of the main problems is that even though we have a lot of video data, it's very hard to understand the content of this video data. So that's why actually we need intelligent systems, smart systems that can analyze automatically the video content. So we see here some examples. So for example, for video surveillance, as I say, you have hundreds of thousands of cameras like in cities like Paris or London. But in order to monitor people to see whether there are some crimes or some problem in the transportation and so on, but in order that the system be effective, actually you need human operators that can see what's happening over the cameras and to trigger some alarms and so on. But for example, in all the cities, big cities like Paris, the city cannot afford to hire a large number of people that can monitor the cameras. So that's why we need automatic systems that can analyze the video content and to detect some anomalies, for example, whether they are related to crime or accident or whatever. Yeah, today, yeah, just manually, so just visually, human operators need to do this. But it's not only long term, but you have hundreds of thousands of cameras, but so you need enough people to be able to monitor them. And today these people are not available because it's very costly. And the other thing, mostly the cameras today are used actually afterwards, when some problem occurs, when some accident occurs, or some crime. Actually, this professional goes back to the video content and try to analyze, but not before. Not in real time because they don't have the human resource to do so. So that's why this is important to have automatic system that can do this heavy job. The other application is, as I said, you have also millions of videos of over the internet. And here the interest is not the monitoring or surveillance, but rather one of the major interests by big companies like Google, like Microsoft and so on, is to be able to put advertisements alongside the videos in the same way they do it for when you look for some text. But in this case, actually, they need to know what is the content of the video, what is the topic of the videos before placing this advertisement. So again, we see that there is a need to analyze automatically the video content. The third and final application, which is very important, is regarding health. Digital health. There is more and more applications, for example, for helping elder people who live by themselves, for example, smart homes. And the idea here is to have like robots or other automatic intelligent systems that try to detect whether there is some problem happening with older person, like falling down, like for example, a person forgetting to close the door when leaving the house, etc. So again, in this case, we need systems, for example, robot that is equipped with several sensors that can be able to analyze the scene and also the behavior of the person. Another application is regarding autism and children. So in this case, children with autism, for example, have trouble to interact socially with other people, other children, etc. So today there is more and more application, what we call serious games. For example, some robots that can play with the children and help the children to interact more socially through some games. Again, to be able to do so, the robot through the cameras needs to understand what the kid is doing, right? Whether he's doing the motion in the right way or not. Okay. So all these applications are showing that actually we need automatic system that can process the videos in automatic way. Okay. Now, what is a video? A video sequence is a sequence of images, right? So if you have, for example, the normal frame rate, 1 second of video usually is equal to 30 to 24 images per second. So video sequence is nothing less than a sequence of image frames. So from the perspective of classification, pattern recognition, so for us, video is a sequence of frame or sequence of observation. So one frame, if you can extract some pictures, it means that you can have some observation for each image, for example. So it means that actually the problem that we are dealing with here, if we want to classify the video, the motion, etc., is the problem of classification of observation sequences. Okay. So here an observation will be some feature vector that you extract, for example, for each image. Okay, and in this case you have a sequence of this observation. So if we are talking about classification of sequence of observations, it means that we have in general two kinds of problems. Whether we are dealing with data that are not sequential, not like videos. For example, you want to recognize a face, right? Face recognition. This is an example of static data, not sequential data, right? So you see here there are some examples: face recognition, digit recognition, satellite imaging, right, or iris. These are all examples of static data. At the opposite, you have sequences, so like speech recognition. So this the speech is sequential in time. Handwriting recognition, because there is an order from left to right or right to left, or classification of video sequences, right? For example, gait recognition or gesture recognition. So both kind of problem, whether static recognition or sequential classification, are part of the problem of statistical pattern recognition or machine learning. Today it's the term that is more used. And actually machine learning, the problem of statistical pattern recognition, I guess you have already had some classes maybe for some techniques, but in general it calls for different techniques, different disciplines. These are some of the most important. So in order to have expertise in machine learning, you need to learn about probability and statistics, artificial intelligence, optimization is very important, and also at least the basic notion of algebra and mathematics, computer science. Okay? So today this is a really interdisciplinary discipline. Here I'm just giving you some of the most popular machine learning techniques today. I guess you know some of them, like Gaussian mixture models, right? Super vector machines, Bayesian modeling. You know a little bit about Bayesian probability. But you have also what we call linear subspace methods, like principal component analysis, linear discriminant analysis. You know about this technique? PCA. So there are some other techniques that are similar. Techniques of clustering, neural network. We have studied a little bit about neural network and deep learning also. So just introduction, yeah. So which is an extension of neural networks, and yeah. No. And you have other techniques like genetic programming, reinforcement learning, and hidden Markov models, which we'll study today, okay? Because hidden Markov models is one of the techniques that are used for sequential data recognition, okay? So let's start before talking about sequential recognition. Let's start first about the problem of static recognition. Static recognition means when the data are not sequential, right? So it means that we have an input, for example, face or digit or whatever, and we extract some features to a vector x that represents the feature. So it's a vector of d features. It has d components, x1, x2, xd, okay? And the problem, we want to classify this vector, this input, into one of subclasses, so classes, okay? We are talking about the faces. These are the names, identities of the people. You have the digits, the class from 0 to 9, right? Etc. Okay. So I give you a simple example, which is regarding loan application. Means actually some person wants to get a loan from some bank. So when you want to get a loan from some bank, you give your some data regarding you, okay? And the bank will analyze your data and decide whether to give the loan or not, right? So this is a problem that we can model like a problem of classification, where the classes, we have two kinds of classes, either we approve or not, so yes or no. So the data is the loan application from the client. The task is to have whether the loan is approved or not. Okay, we have two classes. So let me get a little bit fast here. So you have here an example of data from different clients. So you have here 15 clients. You see the IDs of the clients, and each one give this data, which are kind of simple here. So the kind of the data that we consider is the age of the person. You have some question? Don't hesitate to stop me. That question. Okay. So the kind of data that the client will provide is the age, whether the person has a job or not, whether the person owns a house or not, the credit rating. This is something specific to countries like the United States. Usually it's based on the history of credits that the person takes. So whether this is a good client or not. So usually you have a score between 0 and 1,000. And here you have the class. So these are previous clients that the bank has already processed. So we know that this first person, the bank had rejected the loan. Just human expertise, just normal. So and the idea here is we want to take this data and to develop automatic system. Okay. But for this application, the example is quite simple. You see, for the age, we consider only 3 categories: whether the person is young, middle-aged, or old person. For the job, just whether the person has a job or not, own house, parts or not, credit rating. We have 3 possibilities: fair, good, and excellent, and the class yes or no. Okay? So you see, this is an example of the input that I was talking about here. It has 4 dimensions. The D, you can see them here. We have x1, which is the age, the job x2, well, and we have 2 classes. Okay. So here we have an example where our features are discrete. See, these are not continuous values. So one of the first solution, for example, if you want to design automatic system, is maybe to try to have just logical rules. Logical rules means that you see just this kind of data, and you have like if else, okay, if the person has is old and has a job and owns a house, then the class is yes, etc. And then depending on the combination, we set logical rules that decide whether to approve the loan or not. So this is one of this might be a solution, but in real application this is not possible. And why is that? Is especially because of the problem of cardinality. It means that here you see the problem is quite simple, but in reality the bank will not ask just for your whether you are young or old, etc. It will ask for your real age, right? So yeah, like 80 values at least or something. Same thing for whether you have a job or not. It will not ask only for that, but also for the salary as well. And same thing for house, what is the value of the house and so on. So you see that the number of combination, it will be millions and millions, right? And it's not possible just to have rules, yeah, just logical rules designed by hand. This is not possible because the cardinality is very high. That's why also there is the problem of ambiguity, which is sometimes it's not clear to understand why this person get the loan approved and why this other person is not. So in these scenarios, the best solution is to use probabilistic modeling. So how we do probabilistic modeling? We have a vector X with features, and we want to classify it into one of the K classes or Y classes. And this is actually the Bayesian modeling. What we call the optimal decision strategy is the one that computes the probability of every possible class given X, the features, and decide for the class that gives the maximum probability. Okay? So for example, in this example, we have only two classes, whether approved or not. So we need to compute these probabilities and decide if the probability of approving is higher than the one of not approving, given X, then we decide to approve. Otherwise, it's the opposite. So this is what we call the optimal decision strategy. Okay. So I may ask a question here. Why we? I don't know if I can write here. Okay, that's this one. Stop sharing. Okay. And just I can, yeah, with this. And then I think we need but the problem is starting from here and here. Okay. I can use the whiteboard if you want also. Use the whiteboard, or you can use
up on the video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me try here. There are not it's okay, maybe I will avoid. Yeah, I will avoid them. Yeah, so as I said, the optimal decision strategy is to compute the probability of y, each class given x, and to decide for the optimal, for the class that maximizes probability. Now the problem, so here in this example, we have two possible classes. So we set the problem like this, but the problem is how to compute these probabilities. Okay, this is the problem. So usually what we do, so this is the rule that I just mentioned. So what we instead of computing directly this quantity, we call for what we call the Bayes rule. Do you know the Bayes rule? Yeah, it tells you something. Yeah. So instead of computing directly this term, usually we replace p of y given x by p of x given y, p of y over x. Okay. Why we do this? Because usually these terms, p of x given y and p of y, are easier to compute than the first term. This is why we do it. And actually this we call it the fundamental equation of statistical partner recognition. And actually it puts in evidence three terms. The first one, actually the second, p of yk, is what we call the a priori probability of class yk. The second term is p of x given yk, is what we call the likelihood or the class conditional probability of the data. And the last term, p of x, is the evidence of probability of data. So let's start before starting about that. So when we do that, we have three terms, but we observe that the last term doesn't depend of the classes. You see, the classes are the yk. Since we actually want to pick the class that gives the maximum, actually we can drop this term, p of x. Do you agree or not? So here I need really to write. You mean here? Ah, I see. So where is it? Ah, yeah, I see. Yeah, okay. Second one. I see. Okay. I mean, just write with the mouse. Yeah, we say that p of x given yk, p of yk p of x, right? So so the idea is what we want to compute this quantity for every possible k, right? So for example, in the example, how many classes we have? So we have k either equal to 1 or 2, okay? And once I compute this for k equal to 1 and for 2, what do I need to do? Yeah, but once I have computed them, I compute the first for k equal to 1 and for k equal to 2. What do I need to do? Yeah, yeah, we need to compute the maximum, right? Once we have computed both terms for k equal to 1 and k equal to 2, we need to compute the maximum. So, but if we do this, you see that this term will not change whether it's for k equal to 1 or k it's the same. That's why we can drop it. We don't need it actually, okay? Because it will stay the same. So that's why here you see, instead of computing this, we compute only the numerator for k for every possible k, and then we take the maximum, okay? Because the denominator doesn't depend on the class. Understand? Hmm. Ah, and the pointer is, you mean, here? This one? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so when we compute this term for k equal to 1 and 2, this term will stay the same. That's why we don't need it. We need to compute only this, the product of these two terms, okay? Now, so this is what we need to compute. Now, do you have an idea what do you mean by P of yk? I said that it was the a priori probability of class yk. What does it mean? What do we intend by probability of? For example, in the example it's the probability of loan. Yeah, but in the case of the bank example, yeah. So why you are saying for a specific age? But what is y? The outcome. So here we are not talking about the features, right? Yeah, and we are not talking about the age or anything, right? So do you have an idea how we can estimate it, how we can compute it? For example, in the case of the example of the bank. Yeah. Right. So here we are not talking, looking at the features, just what is the percentage, basically, of the persons that had the loan approval versus the others. So that's why we call it the a priori, the term a priori, because we are not looking at the features, at the profile of the person. Just if we look at, if we go at this bank, say, okay, what is the upper probability that the bank gives loan? So it's, if it says 20% or 50%, it means that 50% of the case is approved. Okay. Now we have the second term, which is what we call the likelihood probability of x given yk. Now, if we know that the class is approved, what is the probability of having, for example, young and the person not having a job, etc.? We call this the likelihood. Okay. Now, in this example, how we can compute p of x given yk? So we saw that for p of yk, it's quite simple. We look at just at the statistic. But if we want to compute p of x, sum of the x has 4 features. Given sum of the class, how we can do this? And why you say the percentage of approval versus the percentage of non-approval? Yeah, but you see here, no, I'm not talking about it. You see X here, it means the vector. The whole, you need to multiply what? The probability of every, actually, we'll see. In general, you cannot do this, but we will get back to it. First thing, the second term for X given Yk, for example, if Yk is approved, you need to look only at the cases where the loan is approved, because you are conditioning on this. This is what we mean by conditioning. You see, you don't look at all to the other class, because we know now that we are working on one possible class. Okay. In this example, since it is simple, how many? So we want to compute the probability of every X. X is the combination of 4 features. How many combination we have in this example? You see here the result, you can see it. If we want to compute this K of X given Yk, we need to compute 70 terms. Is this actually is the number of combinations that are possible. If I consider only one class, okay, for example, approved, how many, what are the number of combinations that X1, X2, X3, and X4 have? You see the results here actually. Why we have it? Actually, it's quite simple. You need just to see how many possibilities we have for H, how many possibilities we have it gives 9 by 4, which is 36. Why I put here -1? -1 is just because if you know the first 35 terms, the last one you know it because the sum of probabilities is equal to 1. Okay? And they multiply by 2. Why? Because we have 2 classes. You see that in this example, I need to compute 70 terms. How I compute each one of them? For example, the first one is probability of having a young person with no job, with no house, and with a fair credit rating, given class no. Just I compute it by, I look how many in the database, how many people have exactly these 4 features, over, not all the data. Yeah, for the same class. This, and I compute the probability. Right? So we can do this. But here we have overall 70 terms like this just by counting for every possibility. Yeah. So this is, you see here, this is for a simple example, but assume that what I have said before, if we have a realistic data with all ages possible, with the value of the house, with the salary of the person, you see that the number of terms will not be 70, but billions and billions, right? Yes? Yeah. You understand the 36? Yeah. So I say, when I say probability of X given Yk, you see every X is a one combination of X1, X2, X3, and X4. Okay? So we need to see here how many combinations we have. So for the age, we have three possible values, right? Young, middle, and old. For a job, we have 2, false or yes. So if you look at this combination of the two, you have 3 by 2. You need to multiply the number of combinations. 3 by 2, it means 6. So here you have, for our in-house, we have also 2 possibilities. So you have here 3, 2, 2, 3 possibilities, okay? And in order to determine the number of combinations, you need to multiply all. So we have 3 multiplied by 2, by 2, by 2, which gives you 36. These are all the combination of having young 3, 2, 4, 6, okay? Minus 1 is because if you have 3 events, for example, if you have only 3 events, if you know the first 2, you already know the third because the sum of probabilities is equal to 1. Okay? So that's why actually if I know the first 35, we already know the 36. Okay? So this is just in a very simple example, but as I said, if you have a realistic example, you cannot do this. You cannot compute the probability in this way because it's just not possible. You need billions and billions of data to be able to do so. So that's why actually we need to make assumptions to make the problem easier for realistic data. And this is the role of what we call the naive Bayes classifier. So, okay, so what we were doing right now is the just normal Bayes classifier. And the naive Bayes classifier, what it says is simply we will assume that all the features are independent when we know the class. Okay, so here we have four features. The assumption says that all the features are independent. Okay, so we'll see what is the effect, what is the consequence of this assumption. If the features, the components of X are independent, condition independent, it means that the probability of X given Yk, we can compute as the product of the individual components. Okay, this is the consequence of the assumption of independence. So if we do this assumption, for the same example, if instead of having 70 terms, we have only 6 by 2, which is 12. Actually, instead of having 35, we have only 6. Can you see why? You see here, we don't need any more to look at the combination because we will compute the probability of every feature independently from the others. Probability of having young given no, probability of pass given no, but we compute them separately. Okay? So in this case, for example, for this first term, how many probabilities I need to compute? 3, but again, if I know the first 2, so it means I need to compute only 2 terms, right? For the second, 1, 2. Okay? Yeah, because we have 3 categories. So you see 2, 2, 1, 1, it makes 6. You see? So instead of having 35, I have only 6 terms. And this actually, if you have huge data, even the gain is much more important. And in this case, you can do the computation, okay, even if the data is not very huge. So this is one of the advantages of naive Bayes assumption. It makes computation much easier and much more feasible. Okay. So in this case, actually, this is the rule that we get. For every class, we compute the product of individual probabilities multiplied by upper layer probabilities and pick the maximum. So let's just summarize what I have said before. So if you have some data sets in general, we can compute the probability of every feature individually. So if we have discrete data like in the example, you see each time we just compute the frequency of every element. This is what we have done in the example. And if you have, instead of having discrete value, you have continuous values, you still can do the same thing. Easier is just instead of computing the frequency, for example, we can assume that we have a Gaussian distribution. You know Gaussian distribution, okay? So it has two parameters, right? The mean and the variance. And we can compute in the same way this probability in an easy way if we take the features are as independent. You can see that we can compute the mean of every Gaussian just by simple statistics. This is the mean of the data, and the variance. These are the usual formula for variance and the mean that you compute from some data. But the key thing here is that with this assumption, whether we have continuous value or discrete values, the computation is quite simple. And this actually turns out to be, this approach that I have shown to you is used a lot in practice, and one of the examples is spam detection. You know the problem of detecting spam. This is an example where this naive Bayes approach is used in practice. There are systems that are really based on this approach. The problem of spam detection is you have somebody that sends you some email, right? Uses some strange, and you can identify some keywords, right? Sometimes somebody that wants to gives you millions of dollars, right? If you help him or her, and you have also some adjectives. Usually, we are talking about honesty, about reliability, confidence, this kind of things. And the idea is how, given some input like this, how to develop a system that automatically classifies the spam, whether it's a good email, what we call ham, or rather spam, right? And you see, this is also another example. We have two classes, spam, ham, right? And in practice, actually, how it is done in the system. So in this case, the input is the text, right, of the email that we can represent by a set of words. So the X will be a set of words, and the class is whether good email or not. Well, so there is a problem here. Is you see, if you look at the emails, each email has a different length, a different set of words. While up to now, if you see the example, for example, of the bank, you have a feature vector of 4 dimension, fixed dimension. So if you want to use this system for spam detection, you need to normalize your text so as always the input has a fixed size. This is important. Whether you want to use naive Bayes or neural network or Gaussian mixture model is the same, or SVM is the same problem. You need to have an input of fixed dimension. So for email, what is the approach that is done, and it makes sense. Instead of looking at all the words, we will look only at some important words. So we will define a dictionary, dictionary of important words. So for example, we won't consider we or want, because these are basically useless for spam detection. So usually you will define a dictionary that can be very big, 1,000 or 2,000 words, or the important words of the target application. And given an email, we will convert it into this feature vector. How we can do this? You have an idea? So I develop a dictionary, consider a dictionary, let's say 4,000 words, and now I have an email, and I want right, yeah. For every word of my dictionary, how often it appears in the email, right? So in this case, whatever the email, I always have a feature vector of dimension 4000, which is the size of the dictionary. This is how it is done in practice. And we see here the advantage of having the naive Bayes assumption, assuming all the words are independent. Otherwise, it will be very hard to compute the product of the combination, right? And this is how it is done in practice. We assume that every word is independent, and we compute just by the frequency of each word given each one of the classes, given whether we have spam or we have a good email. So, but we have the first term, which is the a priori probability. How we can compute this term? The first term, P of yk, which is probability of having spam or not. So, for example, in this University of Créteil, how can do it, for example? You want to develop this system for the university here?
Yeah, we want to set all things, we have to set the kind of entry, manual entry together. So we need to label each email manually.
Yeah.
Whether it is spam or not. After we have another way of label email, we can start it from just counting.
Right. 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 Or you can do it. That's correct. Or you can say, okay, for example, you have all the students and staff here receive emails every day. Some are spam, some are not, and you can let's use the system that you use in the university as a mechanism to label automatically, just to take all the spams that are received here by everybody. So you have them. And you use the frequency to assume. So this is an example. You can have this kind of quantity quite easily. Okay. And now for probability of every word, given spam or given good email, you do the same thing. You can take all the emails, or not from everybody, but from some sample data, and you compute the frequency of each word, and you have the probability, right? And then for each new email, you can compute the probability of the two classes by computing this product, and you can classify, right? Well, I say in the beginning, if you remember, this is the optimal decision strategy. If I return back to the optimal decision strategy, or if we have some input and we want to classify it, we compute this term and we pick the maximum. And I say that usually we use the Bayes rule, not to compute P of X given Yk multiplied by P of Yk, because to compute this term directly, usually it's difficult. But nonetheless, there are some approach that do compute this term directly. Okay, so we saw the first kind of approach that used the Bayes rule, but there is other techniques, and the most known technique is what we call the logistic regression. It's compute directly this term. Okay, and actually, you see here, this is the formula for computing probability of Yk given X directly. So first thing, you see that there are some exponential. This guarantees that the probability is always positive, and the denominator just a normalizing term. It makes sure that the probability is always between 0 and 1. And you see that the probability depends on the features that appear here through a linear combination with some weights. Okay, if every feature is given weight. And now the problem. So remember, for the naive Bayes, we computed the frequencies, etc. Now the problem is different. We need to find the weight of the features. So this way of computing probability is quite robust, but it comes with a cost that is the estimation of the probability is more difficult than the naive Bayes assumption. Okay, so that's why actually what is used is optimization techniques based on gradient descent. It's the same thing that is used in neural network. I don't know if you have seen this in neural network, gradient optimization, etc. So just to tell you that this technique is more robust, but it's more complex in order to estimate the probabilities. So, and if I want to compare both naive Bayes and logistic regression, so we see that the naive Bayes, instead of computing P of y given x directly, it replaces it by this product, while the logistic regression computes it directly. Okay. But so logistic regression has the advantage, it doesn't make any assumption, doesn't say, okay, the x features are independent. There is no assumption of independence. While the naive Bayes make a strong assumption, it says, okay, every feature is independent. Okay, so that's why we call logistic regression as discriminant classifier, while the naive Bayes we call it as generative classifier. Okay, so parameter estimation, as we have seen for naive Bayes, is quite simple. So we compute just frequencies, or easily the parameters of the Gaussian distribution. While for regression, it's more complex. You need gradient descent, etc. In terms of performance, usually when you have your training data is quite small, usually let me start with the other. Okay, if you have your training data are quite big, quite important, usually the logistic regression can give better results. Why is that? Because it doesn't make any assumption on the individual features. It doesn't say they are independent. Assume that your features are really dependent. So of course you lose something if you say they are independent. But if you have your training data is not that big, naive Bayes actually turns out to be better. Okay, so you see there is a compromise. That's why it's always good if you have data, you can try both techniques. If you know that your data is not that big, it's better to use just naive Bayes. Okay. So this was an introduction for static inputs. So you see, we didn't take into account any sequential kind of data. And we have both kind of technique, whether naive Bayes, which is generative, or logistic regression. Now, if we have a sequence observation, we have something equivalent. So if, instead of having naive Bayes that you use for static inputs, hidden Markov models that we will see for gesture recognition actually are the equivalent of naive Bayes, but applied to sequential data. Okay, and for the equivalent to logistic regression is what we call the conditional random forest. So today we will talk more about hidden Markov model. Okay? So I don't know if usually you take a break or yeah, let's take maybe 10 minutes and I start talking about hidden Markov models. Okay, let's resume our class. So we'll go directly to the second file, second PDF regarding hidden Markov model. So right now we have seen classification of static inputs. So now we will see how we can do the classification of sequential inputs using hidden Markov models. And as I told you in the beginning of the class, so in second course that we will have on January, we'll have a lab on gesture recognition using hidden Markov models. So today I will give you some description of how hidden Markov models can be used. So now you see our inputs are sequential data. We have some sequence of observations, O1, O2 until OT. For example, if we have a video sequence, we have T frames. From every frame, from every image, we will extract some feature vector, OT. Okay? So you see OT can be discrete, can be continuous, can be a scalar, can be feature vector, whatever. But in any case, the video sequence, for example, will be a sequence of such feature vector or observations. So here is some examples. The first one is regarding the stock market. So for example, investment in some company. and usually you are given the state of the business, the state of the business of that company using three symbols, for example, whether the business is up or down or unchanged. So, and you are given, for example, the state over 1 week from Monday to Friday. Okay, so Monday was up, and then unchanged, down and down. And the idea is how to predict, for example, the outcome the following week, for example. So here we are having sequential data. Second example is having handwriting. So for example, you have some image of some words. And since you know, for example, for French or English, you write from left to right. So you can extract features from left to right. For example, this is one example. We use what we call the sliding window approach. You see here there is a window, local window, from which you extract some features, some feature vector. And you slide this window, so the window will be displayed from one local part to another, and you extract the feature vector OT at each time. And in this case, you end up having a sequence of observations. Okay. For weather, also, you can, for example, if you want to have a model that predicts the weather, you are given the state of the weather for 1 week, for example, or for 7 days, whether it was sunny or cloudy or rainy. And again, the goal is to predict the weather over the following day. Speech is another example of sequential data. And we see that actually either we have the problem of prediction or classification of the input. Okay? So to give you an example, let's take the example of handwriting. And specifically, let's assume that we want to have a system to recognize dates. And one of the fields of the date is the month, right? So this is an example of the image of a month, July. And this is an interesting example because we see that we have sequential data, but at the same time, the number of classes is quite small. We have 12 classes that correspond to the month from January to February. And as I said, so we extract from each window here some feature vector, OT, and we end up with converting the image into a sequence of observation. Okay? And we want to have a system that classifies the image, the sequence of observation, into some of the 12 classes. And you see the first thing that we can observe is that nothing has changed with respect to what I have shown before regarding static inputs. In order to do optimal classification, the optimal decision rule, we need to compute the a posteriori probability of the class given the input. But instead of having X that before, which was a static input, now we have a sequence of data, which is O. Okay? But otherwise, everything stays the same. Yes. Yeah, this is a good question. Our problem here, we want to see how we can do classification if our data are sequential. Now, how we obtain sequential data, this is, I would say, a different problem. So if we have a speech, for example, naturally is sequential. Some handwriting, sometimes it is sequential if we take online handwriting, dynamic, But if there is some image, yeah, we can convert. But you see, if we, instead of having July, we have the image of 9 or digit 9. Doesn't make sense to transform this image into sequential data. Here we want to convert into sequential data because we know that there is a sequence of letters there. July, so you have J, U, L, Y. Okay? So depending on the problem, you have your input in some kind, but you can convert it into, yeah. And actually, if you look, we have the opposite in the span problem. We did the opposite. We have a sequential data, which was the text, and we converted it into kind of static inputs. Since we didn't take into account the order of the words, we specified the dictionary. And you see, it's depending on how we want to model the problem. And I didn't mention that in the span detection. It means that we said, okay, we want to consider into account the order of the words. We could have done so, because so the problem becomes much, much more complex. Because the number of combinations, that's why we take it out. So you see, depending on the problem, is how we want to model. Okay. So here, what we will do is to compute the quality of the class, as we have done for the static inputs. The only difference now is that instead of having X, which was a static input, we have a sequence of observation. Okay. So again, here we will use the same assumption than before, which is the Weiss rule. Instead of computing P of W given O, we compute the quality of O given W, quality of W over P of O. Okay. Again, we see similar terms. P of W is the upper quality of the class. In the example, it's the quality of the months, right, of every month. And we have the first term. So this is the first thing that is important for you to know, is that this is where hidden Markov models come into play. Hidden Markov model is to compute only this term, P of O given W. Okay. So hidden Markov model doesn't compute P of W given O. Okay. And that's why I said there was an analogy with naive Weiss that I said at the end of my presentation before. So the naive Weiss was computing P of X given the class, where we are assuming that the components of X are independent. So here it's the same kind of term. It's just instead of having the static input X, the compute quality of O, which is the sequence given the class. And this is where hidden Markov model is used. Okay. So again, here P of O, we can discard it because it's the same for all the classes. And we have only to compute the product of the first terms. So now if we want to compute the a priori probability of P of W in the example, which was month recognition, how we can compute this term, P of W? Mm-hmm.
Taking account giving 1 month has more probability to give the second month or
yeah.
This kind of
Mm-hmm.
the first one is just blindly counting 1 divided by 12.
Yeah, but anyway, for me the key term you said we assume. You see, this is where the terms a priori. So we are using our a priori on the application. That's why we call it a priori probability. This is our assumption, our knowledge about the application. Actually, if we don't have any information about the application, for example, this is you want to recognize the amount of bank check, but you don't have any information. Okay, so okay, let's assume that all the amounts are equally forward. But actually, if you know that you work in a bank and you want to get such a system, you can use actually the current date. You know that if you are in December, most checks we have this. So, and is there a way to estimate this kind of probabilities more precisely, knowing that actually we know beforehand that we are likely to have more checks, much more likely to have checks in December and January and in March or February. What we can do is, for the bank in question, you can ask about statistics over the last year, you see, the last 5 years. In the month of December, how many checks came in March, etc. And this is a way to estimate this kind of things. Okay? So, yeah, actually, it's a better way. If you can afford, if you have a need to access this data, you can do it. Otherwise, if you don't have any way, you can just, okay, let's just put it by hand or just put 1/12. You see? Yeah, it depends on how easy it is to access data. So now, as I said, is the hidden Markov model is responsible for computing the quality of all of the sequence given each class. Now let's see what is a hidden Markov model. Okay? So hidden Markov model, there are two terms. It's a Markov model that is hidden. Okay? Because I'm saying that because there are some Markov models that are not hidden, that are visible actually. Okay? So here these are two terms. So let's first see what is a Markov model, and then we see what is hidden. Okay? So hidden Markov model, a Markov model that is not hidden, is just a set of states that are connected by some edges or arcs. Okay? And each actually arc has a probability, which we call the probability of transition from one state to the other. Okay? So you see that if you are at some state, you can go to other state, and you can also stay in the same state. Here we are talking about self-transition. The states stay, the models stay in the same state. And we have loops. Okay? So this is kind of automata, so set of states. So what do we mean by Markov? Markov is a Markov assumption. And you see here the equation of this assumption. It says actually that the probability that the model, so when you see the symbol Q, it means the state at some time. So Qt, it's what is the state of the model at time t. And it can be any of the state S. So S is the state of the model. For example, in the example, we have two states, S1, S2, S3. Okay? But Q is the state at any time. For example, at time 2, the model was in state 3. At time 5, it was state 4, etc. Okay? So Q is the variable, and S are the actual states. So the Markov assumption says simply that the probability that the model at time t is equal to S, J, given the state of the model at the previous times, at time t minus 1, t minus 2, until time t equal to 1. Actually, this probability depends only on state at time t minus 1, not on state of time minus 2, times t minus 3, and so on. You understand? So the probability of being on some state at time t depends only on the probability of being at some state at time t minus 1, not at the state much before. Okay? Which simplifies a lot the problem. This is the Markov assumption. No, we are not saying this. We are not saying. You have a process. It means that once the model in some state, the fact of going to another state, you see, it doesn't depend on how we get to this. You see, I'm at this stage, and they want to move to a new state. This probability of moving to a new state doesn't depend on how I came to this state. Once I have this is the only thing I need to know. The state I'm in at this moment, not how I got to this state. So all the history is summarized into the current state. This is the only thing we need to know. But you can do whatever motion you want. It can be sudden, but it depends only on the current state. No, here, for example, here in this equation, t minus 1. T minus 1 is the current state, and they want to move to the state at time t. You see, it doesn't depend on time t minus 2, whatever. This is the Markov assumption, okay? So this Markov model is defined by two terms. The probability of making transition from one state to the other, this is the Aij, which is the probability of going from state Si to state Sj. Yes? You have some question? No? Whatever the time, you see here, there is whatever t, it means the most important thing is which state I'm going from to which state I'm going to. So for example, the probability of Aij, if t is equal to 2, for example, time, it means that it will be the probability of q at time 3 equal to Sj given q2 equal to Si. But this will be the same probability if time is equal to 10, for example. We don't care about at what time we moved from Si to Sj. We always use the same probability. Okay? In this case, this is what we call a homogeneous Markov model. The probability of transition doesn't depend on the time itself, just on the identity of the states. Okay? There is only one probability from moving from Si to Sj. Whether I'm in time 2 or time 10 or 100, it's always the same. Okay? And we have an additional probability, which is Ti, which is the probability that the model starts in some state. Ti means probability that the model starts in state Si. Okay? At time t equal to 1. Okay? So this is basically a Markov model. It's quite a simple model. Just you want to make a transition, it depends only on the first state on the second state, not what happened before. So here again you have the Markov assumption. Now if you have this assumption that I had mentioned, and you want to compute the probability of you're having a sequence of states, Q1, Q2, until Qt. Okay, yeah. So actually, here actually, again I need to write when you see this expression, is it okay for you? You understand? Probability of Q1, Q2, Qt is equal to this product. Here or not? If you have P of A and B, This is equal to P of A given B multiplied by what? Multiplied by what? P of A and B is equal to P of A given B multiplied. This is basic probability equation. P of B probability of A and B is probability of A given B multiplied by probability of B. This is general, it's always true. Okay? Probability of having A and B is probability of A given B multiplied by probability of B. Okay? Forgot about this? Because this is important in order to understand how all the development of hidden Markov model is done. And this is what is used here actually. Here the only difference is that I call this A, QT, and the rest B. All from Q to QT now, this is B. This is A. This is B. I see this P of A given B, which is like a probability of B. Okay. And so you want to compute probability of a sequence of observation. You can split this term into the products of these two terms, and here we can use the Markov assumption. Remember, probability of Q, QT given all the rest. What is it? If you use this assumption of the Markov. QT depends only on, yeah, this is what you see here, right? It doesn't depend on all the others. So it doesn't depend on this, right? So this is what you see here. And then we have now this term, and I apply again the same thing. It's the product of two terms, and each time I use the Markov assumption, and at the end, actually we see that it's equal to this. Is the probability of simple terms, okay? Just the transition between each state and the next one, okay? So all this to say just if you have a Markov model, the probability to compute the probability of sequence of states becomes very, very simple. It's just a product of individual terms. You see here an example of the Markov model. It's regarding the stock market. I gave you an example in the beginning regarding stock market. And here we have three states. Whether we have what we call bull market, it means that the business is good. Bear market means that the business is down, and even means that it's neutral. It means unchanged. So here we have three states. If you have observations, you saw that the business of the company is up or down or unchanged. Actually, there is, if you know that the observation is up, you know that you are in this state. If you know that the observation is down, you know that you are in this state. And which is unchanged, you know that you are in this state. So there is a total correspondence between the observation and the states. Okay? So if you have some sequence of observation, for example, up, up, down, unchanged, unchanged, you can compute it easily, because if you are in up, you know that you are in this state. So you know that you started in the first state. Then if your second observation is up, you know that you stayed in the same state. So you need to make a transition from the first state to itself. Okay. So each time you saw you see some observation, you know which state you are in, and you use the parameter that is associated with it. And in this case, you can compute the sequence of observation. That's why we say that the states are visible. It means that if you know the observation, you know the associated states. Okay. Now the difference with the hidden Markov model, this is no longer true. Okay. So the hidden Markov model is the Markov model, but we have added the term hidden. The term hidden means that if you are in some state, if you are in some state, all the observations are possible. Okay? If you are in some states here, all the states are possible. Okay? And we define a probability distribution that every state can generate all kinds of observations. Okay? With a new assumption, this is the second assumption that you need to know about hidden Markov model. So the first one we said it was the Markov assumption. The second one is that the probability of observing some observation given all the states, and all observation depend only on that state. Okay, this is the second HMM hidden Markov model observation. Okay. So just to summarize, hidden Markov models, you have three parameters. It's a collection of states. So you have the probability that the model starts in some of the states, which is Pi. You have a second parameter, which is Aj, which is the probability of transition from one state to the other. And you have the third parameter, which is the observation, the probability of that each state generates some observation. No, it's actually, as I said here, it will be able through the whole process to compute the whole sequence, the quality of the whole sequence of observation, given some class. So we'll see how. But you have some sequence observation. Remember, for the image, you have the sliding window, you have the sequence observation. It will compute what is the probability of having this sequence for given the month January, given the month February, and so on. The hidden Markov model will be used to compute this, okay, through the hidden state. I forgot to write it. Yeah, in terms of, so hidden Markov model, I said it's a set of states connected by transition. Now there are different types of topologies of hidden Markov models or architecture. There is what we call the fully connected or ergodic HMM, which simply means actually if you are in some states, you can reach all other possible states. There are transitions to, you see that from every state there are transitions to all the others. There is another kind of topologies which we call left to right, which you see this is a left to right architecture. We say that if you are in some states, you can no longer go back to the previous states. You can only stay in the same state or go further. And this kind of model actually is interesting because they are suitable for sequential data, okay, like handwriting, like speech, like gesture, like weather, etc. And they are actually the most used when you have sequential data. Okay?
What do you mean by state and type? For example, the monster
It's no, it's very good question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I would like to write down. And this is the main problem that I have, but I don't know if I can write. Yeah, now actually I won't need it. I will postpone my answer to later because I have specific example for gesture. What do we need by step? Fortunately, I do have it. So just wait. Afterwards, I will give you the exact example. What do we mean by states? And you see that the notion is it's very nice. The notion of states. Now, if we have a hidden Markov model, what is the purpose? What we can do with the hidden Markov model? Basically, there are three tasks that are solved by hidden Markov models. What we call the evaluation problem, the decoding problem, and the learning parameter estimation problem. If I will see if I develop more the theoretical stuff, because I don't know if you are used to manipulate probability theory, etc. So I see that it's kind of not something to. Yeah, but anyway, maybe I won't develop everything, but just for you to know, what you see is the prerequisite. This is basically all you need if you want to understand the equation that comes later. So maybe I won't make the developments, but you can work this by yourself. If you have questions, you can come back to me. But you see, what is needed really is not very complicated. You have basic probability rules. You see the first one, generalize what I have written before. Even if you have three events, probability of A, B, and C is probability of A given B, C. Probability of B given C, probability of C. This is what we call the chain rule. The second one is if you have probability of A, you can make a sum of probability of A and BI of all other events BI. If these events BI are do not overlap, and if they make a partition, it means that the sum of the probability of all events BI is equal to 1. So these are two basic probability rules that are used in HMM to find all the equations. And the other one, the other two things that you need to know, which are very important, is the HMM assumptions. You remember the Markov assumption is the first one, and the second one is the probability of having some observation at some time t depend only on the state at this time. This is basically all you need to know for all the development that you will see later. Okay. So first, the first problem is the evaluation problem. So we have a sequence of observation, okay, that we extract from some inputs, and we want, in order to make the classification, the Markov model, what it does, for each class, it will consider a different HMM. So we will have an HMM for class January, for class, another one for class February, and so on. This is important for me. This is opposite, for example, to neural network. Neural network, when you do it, you have, at the end, you have the classes, but you have only one model. You have the last layer, every neuron corresponds to a class. This is one model. The Markov model is different. You need to consider different HMM for every possible class. Okay? Once you have done this, you have developed this model, you compute the part of observation given each model, and you pick the maximum. Okay? So this is one of the differences. And so in this case, we see that we need to be able if we have some HMM, we need to compute the probability of sequence observation given the HMM. This is the first requirement. And this is what we call the evaluation problem. Okay? So I guess I won't get into the details for you. The probability is kind of, I let you look at all this calculation, and we'll talk more about the application. But just to tell you, just using this assumption that we saw, that I have said, it's very easy and very efficient to compute this probability with the HMM. And in this case, we use what we call the forward algorithm that is used to compute the probability of every sequence given every HMM. This is the forward algorithm. So this is the dynamic algorithm that actually just make computation in a consecutive way for every time, and it uses all these assumptions to make the computation very efficient. Okay. Now we have the second problem is what we call the decoding problem. So up to now we have seen we wanted to compute the probability of the sequence that we extract from a month. But assume now that instead of having 12 classes, we have a huge number of classes. For example, instead of making recognition of months, you want to make recognition of cities. For example, the French post. Okay, you need to make address reading system. Okay, you know, in France you have like the number of cities and small cities, towns, is something like 36,000. So what I have said before, you cannot use it because you will need 36,000 HMS for every town, for every city. And of course, you don't have data to train HMM for it. So usually what we do in this case, instead of having a model for every word, for every city, we consider a hidden Markov model for every letter of the alphabet. Okay? So we have 26 letters. I will consider a hidden Markov model for letter A, another one for letter B, and so on. So in this case, and for the digits. Once we have this, you see here, this is an example. This is a hidden Markov model for one letter, character. And then if you have some words, you can build its model by concatenating the letter models. I pick the model for Y, W, for H and Y, and then I have the model for Y. If I have when, I pick the model for W, H, E, M, and have one. So in this case, I need only 26 HMMs, but I can build any word HMM I want. Okay. But so we can do this. This is what is done in practice. And if you want now to do the recognition, you can have your dictionary of all possible cities, for example, that exist in France, and you build some tree architecture that consider all possible cities. For example, here, if the words are where, which, when, etc., you see this is how we build. You see that here this is the initial state, and then we have W, H, E, R, E. This branch is where. Then we have which, we have word, we have all, and in this case, all the prefixes are shared. You see, we don't need to compute them first. And the node here that you see here, each node is a hidden Markov model for this letter. But you see that in this case now, we can no longer, in order to do the computation, we cannot do this, what I have shown you before. For every sequence, I can't compute the probability given one of the models. Because here we have one huge hidden Markov models, and this huge hidden Markov consider all the words. So if I compute, it won't give you which words is recognized. So we need a procedure that finds what is the optimal path inside there. So this is the second problem that we call the decoding problem. And this is where we use another algorithm called the Viterbi algorithm that is also very efficient. And you see here that actually it will look for the sequence of states that maximize the probability of the sequence. Okay? We will look inside the huge HMM, the optimal state sequence. Okay? This is the Viterbi algorithm. Okay, go past the details of the algorithms. Now the third problem is the learning problem, or the parameter estimation. See, okay, right now we assume that the parameters of the HMMs, what are the parameters of HMMs? HMMs are defined three parameters, remember? The transition from one state to another, which is the probability of Aij. You have the probability of starting at some states, Ti, and the probability of observing some observation given some states. Right now, these are our three parameters, but we need to estimate them, like we did for the nice Bayes algorithm. Okay, so this is where training is used, and the same thing. In order to do training, we need a training data set. We need some database. And again, there is very efficient algorithms to estimate the parameter of HMM, which is called actually the forward-backward algorithm. And actually, it's something that is quite similar to nice Bayes. If you remember, when we talk about the frequency, remember, to estimate the parameters. Here we do something similar, but in a dynamic way, in a sequential way. Okay, so there is optimal parameter estimation problem that are algorithm that is called forward-backward or Von-Vech, the same algorithm. So again, I won't go into the details because there is equations that are all based on the assumption that I discussed before. Okay. Again, there is also what we call discrete HMMs or continuous HMMs. And this is based on the type of observation. If our observations are discrete, we have discrete HMMs. And if the observations are continuous, then we have a continuous hidden Markov model. And if we have continuous hidden Markov model, usually we use Gaussian mixture model for every state. You know Gaussian mixture model in general, GMM, which is a mixture of Gaussians. Gaussian mixture modeling. Anyway, it's sum of Gaussian. So sum of Gaussian is it's an algorithm by itself, but it is used. It can be used inside HMM when we consider Gaussian GMM for every state. Each state will have its own GMM. Okay, this is the continuous HMM. Now I will show you just some few applications before moving to the gesture, which we'll consider in the lab. So HMM was first applied for speech recognition. This is the first practical system and even commercial application. You know, all the today, all the speech recognition systems that you have in your smartphones, basically all of them are based on HMM. So it's, and today they are mixed with the neural network, actually the systems that are implemented in commercially. And the idea of how hidden Markov models are used for speech. You remember, I told you that you see that the speech recognition, if you want to organize every possible words, you cannot have an HMM for every word. But instead of considering the letters, for HMM, for speech, we are talking about phonemes. The phoneme is the basic unit. You know, the phonemes are the basic speech unit. So we consider for every phoneme a hidden Markov model, usually that has 3 states. And if you have this, you can have a hidden Markov model for every word, for every sentence. Handwriting Markov model, handwriting recognition, basically you have something similar, as I have observed. There is it's used also for signature verification, whether online or offline. For bioinformatics, not for DNA processing, because DNA is basically a sequence of 4 types of molecule, right? The ACGT. So hidden Markov model is very used. Basically, is the most used machine learning technique. Other applications, for example, machine translation from one language to another, is based on hidden Markov models. And now I move to gesture recognition, human motion recognition, because basically this is what we will see in the lab session. And we will discuss about the states here in this example. So usually how gesture recognition is designed. First thing, gesture action. We need a mechanism to acquire the gesture, the acquisition, then to extract features, and then apply classification and learning. When we talk about gesture, usually in the large sense, usually, or motion, actually we have different kinds of motion. By gesture, usually we mean motion where the person is want to make some expression that can be understood by the others. Opposite to this are action. Action, for example, when a person walks, so there is a motion, but there is no intention by the person to communicate something to the others, right? Or if the person is cooking or something, there is no intention of communication. Yeah. So gesture, usually there is this intent of communication, either through fingers, hands, even the head, etc. Okay. So both problems are difficult because gesture depends on, but of course action are even more difficult because there is no intention to show what the person is doing, right? So here you see some example of factors of variability that make motion recognition in general complicated. The first one, intra-class variability. If you ask the same person to do the same gesture, it will never do the gesture in exactly the same way, right? So because there is variability. Intra-class variability, if you ask several people to do the same gesture, each person will do it in his or her own way. Okay. There are other problems. For example, the lighting of the scene. If the scene that has different lighting, the acquisition might have some problems. Whether you are indoor or outdoor, okay, so maybe you have shadows, this kind of problem. The background, whether the background is uniform or complex, or even if it is dynamic. For example, if you are outside and you are doing some gesture, but there are some people in the background moving, or some cars, some trees moving, all this make motion acquisition can be problematic. Different clothing, right? Person having different clothes, etc. So you see here that there are a lot of factors that make variable the gesture. And again, if we are talking about the variability and uncertainty, the best way to cope with this is having probabilistic modeling. So you see here, this is a schematic diagram of how motion recognition will work. You have a person making some gesture or some action. So we acquire the video sequence. Then you do pre-processing, extraction of some features that characterize motion, and then classification. So classification means that we need
mathematical model that gives what is the probability that the person have made gesture 1 or gesture 2, gesture 3, and so on. But to be able to do so, we need a training phase. We need this model, our model, to be trained. When we ask several people, each one of them to make all possible gestures, to let the model train, to learn what is gesture 1, what is gesture 2, what is, okay? Through a hidden Markov model, for example, okay? In terms of acquisition, so it will depend on the sensor. And actually you have several types. Conventional cameras, most used, 2Ds, mocap, motion capture cameras that are a lot used, for example, in video games, for movies, and so on. Kinect cameras that are more recent or lead motion. And actually you see that these cameras, depending on the cameras, you may have some parameters like the resolution. We're talking about the images. See, the most used conventional is 640 by 480 pixels, but you can today have much higher resolution or lower if you want to have some speed. Also, the frame rate. The frame rate is how many images per second you can afford. Again, the 30 frames the most common, but you can have higher frame rate or lower. But if you are using just the normal one, 30, you see a video sequence of 2 seconds means that you have 90 images. Okay, so that quickly you have long sequence. So pre-processing, which I showed here, one of the steps of your system. This is optional depending on the acquisition system, depending on your approach. But some of them you might want to reduce the resolution of the frame rates. You may want to redimension, resize the silhouette of the person to a common standard size. Why we may want to standardize the silhouette size. One of the because normally assume that you want to do some identification of some person. Before, I'm not talking about gesture, but just you want to identify the person by silhouette. Of course, you might say that the silhouette, the size, has some information, because you may have people that are taller than others and so on. But the problem is, since you don't know what is the distance from the person to the camera, you cannot rely to this information. Okay, because you don't know whether the person is close or not. So that's why several times people prefer to normalize the size, even if they don't use the actual size of the person. Right, this kind of thing. Another preprocessing is reducing the camera motion. If the camera for some reason is moving, and sometimes in this case it won't acquire. Yes. Also, the blurry effect, but also the fact sometimes when the motion, the camera is moving a little bit, it might not acquire only the motion that is done by the person, but also the motion corresponding to the camera. So in this case, it's important to make this balance, to reduce the motion of the camera and keep only the motion of the person. So here you have some example of cameras, of acquisition system of cameras. So the first one is normal, conventional cameras. The second one is the motion capture, that is used in movies and videos. So you see you have some markers that are attached to the body, and you have Kinect, and you have also leap motion. So basically, all these acquisition sensors have their own advantages, but they have also some limitations. So if we look at the first one, conventional cameras, that existing everywhere. Actually, one of the advantages, for example, compared to the Kinect, is that they work well even from large distance. Kinect only works up to 3 meters, something like that. Indoor and and only at 3 meters, right? So, but the limitation of the first kind of camera is, in order to extract, for example, motion or data, you need sophisticated algorithms. Kinect will give you quickly, for example, the gesture of the person, because it gives you the skeleton. And if the person is making some gesture, you will see through the sequence of the skeleton, right? So you don't need to compute much. Even if you have to correct sometimes the skeleton, but usually you have already the gesture. The mocap is even much more precise than the Kinect, because Kinect is still estimating. It might have some errors, but what is the problem with mocap? Right? You need to put attaches to the body of each person, and it is more costly. Right? So the leap motion, you know, the leap is quite very small. So yeah, it gives you even the gesture of the fingers. So it's more precise than the Kinect, but it works only for short distance, less than 1 meter. Okay, so you see. This, yeah, exactly. But it's only only if you are really close to the computer. But you see, each sensor has its own advantages, limitation. Depending on your application, you need to choose the right sensor that will suit your needs. So you see, for RGB cameras, for example, usually the motion is acquired to detect motion. Use interest points, you know, for example, surf points, etc., that are used in images. We have the equivalent for motion, which are spatial temporal interest points, that actually will extract only the moving points in the body. Okay, so these are for detection motion from just RGB cameras. Basically, it will look at the points that have high variance in terms of space and in terms of time. Meaning that if I'm doing some gesture, basically it will give me only the motion of the points that are at, for example, at the elbow, at the fingers here, but not here, for example, because there is no, these are not, there is no corner here. Actually, it will only look at the corners of the image. Okay, so that's why we call the sparse methods. It's look only at the salient points in the body. Okay. Once we detect these points, the feature extraction actually will take. You need to define the volume around the points, and you do compute histogram of gradient, histogram, all kind of histograms. Yeah, in 3 dimensions, considering the time dimension. Okay. So if you have the Kinect, as I have said, so for every possible posture, you have the associated skeleton with the main joints or articulations. So here you have, for example, definition of the main articulation of the body. And this is interesting. So if you have a sequence of motion. For every frame, we have the position of zones. And we can consider this position in 3D as the features. So if, for example, if you have 20 joints, 20 by 3, x, y, z, is a vector of 60 features. And you see, depending on the motion, I will have different vectors. And we have directly the sequence of observation that we can model the gesture. Okay? So you see here that whether we are using RGB cameras or skeletons, at the end, we will have a sequence of observation. Okay? So it's the same problem. So if we want to have a system that recognizes a gesture among a set of gestures, so we'll you have here an example of two classes, of two types of gestures or actions. So you see here the person is like walking, the first frames, and then it's bending, and then bending up and then walk, right? And here you have another kind of gesture. So basically the person is walking and then maybe he's raising hands and then getting back to the same posture. So you see here there are two gestures. We say that the gesture can have different lengths, so depending on how many seconds, depending how long the person has moved. Okay? And you see that the number of combinations of all possibility of posture is just billions of billions, right? So if you want to say, okay, let's see how many times we have this kind of sequence, it won't work because the number of the possibility is just quite huge. But we can have an intuition to say, okay, let's look at subsequences into the gesture. Okay, let's look at for example, the gestures. We can see that basically it's made up of three portions or subsequences. The first one here, we have similar posture. Second one, basically the person is bending, and the third one, stand up again. And here we have three other different. We might have 4 or 5. This is just an example. There are 3 and 3, but it can be different. Okay? But you see the circles here surround these portions, these subsequences, but I did them by hand. I look at the sequences and I say, okay, these are. Yeah, I did in my hand because I looked. Well, this is basically the notion of state. See, I can say the person is in this state of walking with this posture. You see, we have some variation, but not that much. Here I have a second state of the person. Person is basically bending, right? And here I have the third state. Okay? So now the power of hidden Markov model, it will detect the state automatically. I don't have to tell the HMM what are the states. I let the hidden Markov model learn just from the data, and the HMM will segment itself at the end. It will be able to segment to find, okay, this is first state, second state, for every possibility. You see? So the sequence, and here, this is where you see the quality of transition from one state to the other. Basically, it depends. Yeah, whether I was here, I move here. It doesn't depend on whether there are small differences. And the small differences that you might have here is the third parameter, which was the B, the quality of observing some observation given one state. So it means that when I am in this state, I can observe some variations. And this is given by the third parameter. So I have transition from one state to in the other. But when I am in some states, I can observe some different kind of posture. Okay? So in this example, you see I can define the hidden Markov model with 3 states, which will correspond to these 3 states here. And I will have another hidden Markov model for the second gesture with 3 different other states that will model this. So the state will specialize over the kind of gesture, okay? And the nice thing about H&M is that everything is done automatically. I don't need to label myself the sequence, because it will be very hard. Right? Now, how to find the right number of states? Because here I looked at the data visually. I said, okay, there are 3. But in practice, I don't have the means to do this. So the idea usually what you do is you can try with different number of states, so 3, 4, 5, and let the H&M train and see which one gives the best results. Okay? This is usually how it is done. And this is quite similar actually to neural network, even if it's different. The number of neurons, you don't know it beforehand. You can try with different number of neurons and see which one is better for your problem. You may performance in terms of time. Yeah, it will affect this, but not that much, because the compute is linear in terms of the number of states. Even if you augment the number of states, it will increase, but not that much. The increase is not exponential, for example. If it was the case, yeah, you cannot do this. But the increase is quite, linear. So this is not a problem. Yeah, the Kinect you see, for every frame, the Kinect there is a free software that comes with it that will compute directly the position of the main articulation, of joints of the person. So you have it directly. Yeah. So, and actually it gives you also the depth. You see at which distance you have this. So you can even use this information if you want, and you combine it. But to make things simple, you can use directly just the skeleton and the position of the joints and how they change over time. You see? So this is quite powerful actually. You see there is a huge advantage over RGB cameras because you have this without any, you don't need any algorithm to extract features. You have them already. Okay? So you see here we have some sequence, and again the quality of computing the sequence of observation given each model for every gesture. You see, like I have shown before, every gesture will have its own H&M, okay? And we need to compute the quality of the sequence of observation given each H&M and pick the maximum in order to make classification. Again, we can see that we have a similar problem if we ask the person to make only one gesture and stop. So the problem is simple. We can just make, we know that the sequence contains only one gesture. We just compute for every HMM the one that gives the maximum probability and decide the classification. But if the person make sequence of gesture at the same time, make first gesture and then second, etc., we end up with having the same problem that I have shown before when we talk about recognition of cities, because we have sequence of letters. So again here you can define hidden Markov model for gesture, or one gesture, and then if I want to have the model of G1, G2, G3 sequence, you just concatenate the HMM for the of the gesture. Okay, and again, we can build an architecture that contains all possible sequence of gesture, and in for different. For example, if the person starts with gesture 1 and then produce gesture 2 and so on. Okay. Sequences of gesture. Even we person can perform gesture 1, then gesture 2, then come back and do gesture 1. So here I need to take account of all these possibilities, and then have the Viterbi algorithm, which is the second algorithm for HMM, to find the optimal state sequence in order to decide what was the optimal gesture sequence. Okay. So this is the decoding problem with Viterbi. Mm-hmm. Because so in this case, how the system is always instructions if you need 1 second of data suffering 1 second of data, how the system will keep starting real time data. It's very long. Yeah, the computing can be done in real time. There is no problem with this. Well, yes. Yeah, of course. Because, for example, if the gesture takes 2 seconds, the first step will take 2 seconds. The system needs to wait at least 2 seconds until the completion of the first gesture to make the decision. Yeah. If the gesture takes only 2 milliseconds, how the system knows that whether it needs already make the decision or wait? This is your question? Yeah. Actually, the idea is that at each time, the system needs to make the optimal decision. He can say, okay, right now at this time, for example, 5 seconds, and from the first second to the 2 seconds, there was gesture 1, then from second 2 to gesture 4 per second, and now you can say either, okay, I have told that I have gesture 3, or say, okay, at this point, I don't know yet. Yeah. There's no problem with that. But it's not redesigned in the algorithm. And this is done, it's not a problem. Okay? Maybe I still have some because we start late, I can give you just an example with the Kinect. Yeah, just before, let me show them that I need to copy them. I uploaded some application yesterday, but I don't know if I can upload them again. I don't know. Or otherwise, if it takes time, we'll stop. Because actually, yesterday I uploaded several applications, real applications, that are very interesting. For example, surgeons, that use Kinect. You see here the application. How to turn just normal board like this one into interactive, even if it's normal, through Kinect. It's a nice application. One that is used by NASA robots, actually to make the robots do some action in the space. Yeah, surgery helped by Kinect. Stroke recovery, this is for rehabilitation, using some patients to recover his skills or her skills. Sign language recognition, for the deaf persons. I would say there are some new applications with Kinect. Other nice applications, but I had uploaded them on the system yesterday, but I don't know if you have time, I can still upload them if you are interested. So let's try. Yeah, you can. Yes, you can do the copy that number.
If you want, you can give it to me, and I can distribute it to my colleagues. It's not easy to upload it to the.
Let's try if it is good.
Yeah. Okay. You can try from because it's. Oh no, it's not because.
Yeah. Indeed, maybe one by one, because we have several files. Next board email.
No, you are in notebook.
Okay. Actually, didn't load yet. One second. No, no, no. Mhm. See the simplest way uploading document. Hopefully, is the video going with, but perhaps it's going to individually. I mean, hopefully, there is a document, I think. Should allow Then you back in the user. Okay. No, the documents are available for. These are the one in history, right? Some other documents. Okay. Let's try one of them. Maybe if they open, you think it's it? This one already. Especially yesterday, yes. I think yes. The moment is online or maybe you can start sharing screen. Yeah, that's really the in compress. Because yesterday I clicked on in compress. I didn't see this. So I can share. Can you see it? Can you see the share screen? Okay. Okay. So where are the because actually it's in Pinterest and especially remember this not already in Pinterest. Okay. Or I can go directly to yes. Oh, probably we can go to here. Oh, if you think with this video, not that it work. If it's okay. They can finish it something else. So, can you? No, it doesn't change. You can show it another way. better. Thanks. So this is shared with everybody. You cannot? Maybe you can pass. Yeah, they have access. Yeah, for the students that are online, maybe you can, you have access to the application, the video application that I put. So maybe you can open them and look at them. So here the idea, you have just an enormous screen like this one, but assume that you have a Kinect that acquire your gesture. For example, I'm doing like this, and you have your system that acquires the gesture, and based on this, it will change. For example, if I do this gesture, the system will understand and will zoom out. Okay? So even if the screen is not at all tactile, it becomes this way, you see? Yeah, because it does gesture recognition, understand what I mean, and it changes the zoom or anything actually, you see? So this is one nice application. So in order to do this, what the system needs to do, in order that this application become possible. Yeah, system like that. But first, you need to define the gesture. Okay, if the person does like this is one gesture. If it does, and you do a classification system based on HTML or something else, and once you recognize them, you put the action in place. Yeah, but to do this, you need to define the gesture before. You have. So this is a Kinect. This is application used by NASA in space. Actually, he will command the robot. Right, make the gesture of grasping, and the robot will do the same. Assuming that you have a robot in the space, you can just make command. Let's see, this is an application in Sweden.
General thoracic surgery and thoracic oncology. Technology is big in our specialty and it's getting bigger. Historically, we have x-rays that are up on the screen in the operating room. And if for some reason during the procedure I needed to look at different frame, the only way I could do that is scrum out, go to the machine, find out that information. I have a friend who's a surgeon. He was experiencing this problem in the operating room and saw it as a problem that should be solvable. And when the Kinect came along, that was the missing piece. The thing that's unique about the Kinect is that it sees fundamentally in 3 dimensions, and that means that you have a lot more ability to understand what it's seeing. Gesture is a system that allows surgeons to interact with computers and specifically digital imaging. Just by using your hands on the Kinect, you can actually control your x-ray without scrubbing out. I can correlate what's happening on the patient with what's happening on the images. So there's better flow of surgery, and that translates into better care for my patient.
other that I understand interesting with salmon direction. This is one nice one just for fun in Japan.
At United Arrow's largest apparel store in Tokyo, we built a completely original show window experience that was irresistible to the passerby.
So advertisement is very powerful.
The world's first interactive mannequin mimics the movement of people facing it. Next technology detects humans standing in front of the window. 16 wires, specially developed motor enable the mannequin to copy the exact movements of any person in sight, just like a marionette. People lined up to enjoy the experience and challenge the marionette with various poses. The marionette bot revitalized the show window, opening up completely new possibilities for retail marketing.
It's a good way to attract customers, right? You can look at the other other applications that are interesting. Okay. Then maybe you can copy them here. Normally, anyway, yeah, there is some problem with the platform, but you can. So you copy them. Okay. So it is showing. Yeah. So this is this.